Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live at the Waterhole. Oh, and we're starting off with a bang. Some lovely birds when we're here at Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. I love that we can rely on seeing vultures here and also seeing marabou storks, which I love. It's me, Trishala, happy to be on board with all of you and take you on a trip through the African bush. Remember that we're live and interactive, so you can send through questions and comments. I think this will be the last show I have with all of you until next year. So let's hope that we get some really awesome sightings and some awesome discussions from all of you. So thank you for spending your Sunday with us. And remember to head over to our website to register to send questions or comments, or you can scan that QR code. You can also keep up with the conversation on Twitter or X using that hashtag Wild Earth. And if you want to ask questions or comments in the YouTube chat, remember to use @FC. Now, at this particular camera, we're quite lucky that we get to see so many different types of scavengers. Bird scavengers, that is. They do feed the vultures. Sometimes you can see it on the other Victoria Falls cam at certain times of the day. And that's really something to watch. If you're wondering why they do that, that's because all of our vultures are now endangered here in Southern Africa. And a lot of them are prone to poisoning. And so having these vulture restaurants can be quite helpful for the species. Oh no, don't fight, you two. It amazes me how they get along here, because when you see different scavengers at a carcass, they can be some fights, but mostly everyone kind of knows their role. But it's um, almost military-like in that they are very disciplined. The hooded vultures are not going to be able to do anything until that carcass is opened up by one of the larger vultures. So they just kind of sit around and wait, and they know their turn. But here, because they're all together constantly, they know that there's food available. I almost see more interesting interactions. And most of the time, we see hooded vultures here. We see lappet faced vultures, white backed vultures, white headed vultures. And of course, our marabou storks. In terms of sound, it's really quiet here today. Well, we know that the birds that we're looking at right now aren't aren't very vocal, quite reserved, and they reserve their vocalizations to um, intense interactions. So you might not even know that you're close to these large scavenging birds unless you see them. Joanne Mello, you say happy Sunday or wonderful Sunday to Wild Earth. And Trish, thank you so much. I get to spend at least these 2 hours with all of you. And Darcy Miller, you say good afternoon, Trishala. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you too. But you know, I love to really give ourselves moments of silence when we're watching live at the waterhole because, like I say, it's a different pace to the drives and it's much slower, and it makes us good observers when we get the opportunity to just sit and listen and watch. So, to start us off, warm us up to this pace, let's do just that. A wonderful variety here. Great bird life and some impalas. I always love to see impalas. It reminds me that I am well and truly in the bush. So far we've seen quite a few vultures. Now we have a nice egret. And I think I saw some white-faced whistling ducks earlier as well. Also a hardyduck. Now here in South Africa, hardidahs are just so commonplace. We see them all the time. But there are some varieties that are absolutely beautiful that I would love to see. Like the bald ibis, as well as the glossy ibis. Sometimes you can get the glossy ibis and the hardydah mixed up. But the one we saw was definitely a hardydah. Had a little bit of red at the top, on the top mandible or the upper beak, and a sort of a white line by its jaw. Almost looks like it's put some makeup on to make its jawline appear more strong. Ooh, do we have an eagle drinking there? Oh no, it's a hooded vulture. And here are the white-faced whistling ducks. Hello, guys. I would wish you'd all just take off and sing for us. They're so sweet. Oh, leopard lover, this is an excellent question. You'd like to know if I know or what do I think about Australia not having vultures? Why is that so? Is it because of a lack of predators? So, Australia doesn't have any vultures, everyone, which is pretty unusual. And that South America has vultures, North America, Asia, Europe, Africa, but Australia does not. But when you think about Australia, quite frankly, there's a lot of oddities, and that's because Australia is essentially an island. And when a piece of land is removed, or not removed, but when there isn't a land bridge or some way for animals to cross and for them to interact, to drive different types of speciation, some really crazy things can evolve on an island. And lots of the marsupials are actually very primitive, very basal groups of animals. For example, an echidna is a mammal, but it's an egg-laying mammal. So Australia gives us really interesting insight into what things can be like if there isn't a whole lot of migration. Anyway, coming to vultures. Now, I do know that, I can't remember when it was, but vulture fossils were found in Australia. So they once did exist in Australia, which I think is fascinating. But it seems to have happened, or they seem to have not been able to recolonize Australia after an extinction event that was associated with an ice age some 50,000 years ago. So vultures once were there, but not anymore. And if you think about 50,000 years, that's really not a lot. Not a lot of time for an animal to bounce back. So what takes the place? And I think animal lover, that you're or leopard lover, sorry, that you're actually a little spot on when you say that could it be that there's a lack of predators? I don't think it's just a lack of predators, but I think it's a lack of large animals. I mean, besides like red kangaroos, which are pretty big, apart from that, there aren't very many large animals. And in terms of predators, mammal predators, they really aren't many at all. I mean, I can only think of three, one of which is extinct. So, Tasmanian tiger, a dingo, and a Tasmanian devil. And Tasmanian devils don't exist on mainland unless they're in a zoo. So those are pretty small predators. So if their prey that they would be taking are also going to be pretty small, which means that is there really a need for scavengers? But that niche is still open, right? Because anything can come and scavenge as long as whatever they're scavenging on is dead and been killed by something else. But interestingly, there are some birds that do fit that niche, kind of. For example, crows and other corvids. Oh, there's also red foxes. They kind of fit that scavenging niche, but they're not primarily scavengers. And then you have to wonder, well, if nothing's come to take up that niche and truly evolve into being simply a scavenger, or their primary role being a scavenger fitting that niche, you have to wonder, well, is it necessary? In the example of Australia. But like I said, 50,000 years is not a lot of time for an animal to adapt or for a space to be recolonized by an animal. Obviously, that's easier for birds. But 50,000 years is not a lot of time. But vultures did once exist in Australia, just not anymore. I love thinking about these things, thinking about how animals move throughout the history of life on Earth, where they've moved to, how they've changed, how they've evolved, how they've better equipped themselves, how they've fitted different niches, how they've competed with each other. All of those things I find absolutely fascinating. And I really do enjoy thinking about life on Earth through the millennia. Probably one of my favorite things, actually. I like how they're all just kind of hanging around waiting for their next meal and having a drink while they're at it. Now, Joey, you have a really interesting question. You'd like to know if vultures are territorial. Vultures can be territorial, but mostly when they are paired up and they are nesting. So, as you can see, we have a whole suite of vultures here, and they're not behaving very territorially. And when we think about territories, territories are areas that are defended and are exclusive, at least sex exclusive. Now, if you can imagine, if you've got a nest and you've got a mate, that becomes really important. So they can be territorial at that point. But generally speaking, for example, if they're not mating and not breeding at all and not displaying breeding behaviors in any other time of the year, pretty casually, they can be in large aggregations and may even roost together. And lots of animals are like this, actually, being territorial at the time when it most matters. Good shake. Very nice. I really enjoy it when I see birds rousing those feathers and giving themselves a good shake off. And it was a great example of how vultures take off. A nice hop, 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 and off they go. This is a great camera to watch. I think it was Larato a couple days ago that was asking which is a good camera for birding, and then I said to her, Vic Falls is a good one. Because you can get a lot of vulture species and you're going to see them up in the trees. You might even see some scavenging eagles like tawny eagles and bateliers as well. Marabou storks. There's always a ton going on here in terms of bird life. Picasso, you'd like to know if I've ever witnessed a marabou stork defecating on its legs. Oh, I think that won't be very effective, but I have seen them urinating on their legs. And that is, as you can imagine, a much more effective way to cool off. And I have seen it, but I think when I saw it, it wasn't in. It was a very small amount, but you could definitely see it. And it was quite amazing to watch. So, what marabou storks will do to cool themselves off is urinate on their legs. Now, if you've ever been really hot in a place where there's no air conditioning, for example, back in Juma in the Sabi Sand a week ago, you might try wetting your skin and then lying somewhere where you can get a breeze. And that's because as the moisture evaporates from your body, it's kind of pulling heat with it. This is a very simplified version of the way that evaporative cooling works in terms of physics, but essentially it's pulling heat and it's reaching a state where it can evaporate. And that's very helpful for your body because it's pulling heat kind of from your body. So marabou storks, they don't have feathers on their legs, which means that blood vessels are, or their skin is in contact with the moisture directly, as opposed to being on their feathers when the skin is not in contact with them. And remember that even though feathers can have a network of nerves and blood vessels at certain points, it's certainly not enough to heat up feathers. So the body is the one that maintains the heat. And in order for evaporative cooling to work, the thing that it's on, drawing heat from, needs to be warmer than the outside, the ambient temperature. So by pouring or dripping urine onto their legs, it can help them cool down. Ooh, I think we're in for a treat, everyone. I think it's almost vulture feeding time. So we're going to go over to the other camera here at Vic Falls so we can get a really good image of the way it all goes down. Doesn't look like it's happened yet. Has it happened yet, Mika? Doesn't look like it. Ah, okay. So it's gonna happen in about 6 minutes. Nice. Hillary B, you say, do we have vultures in the UK? And if not, is it because we're an island too? No. So there are vultures in Europe, but maybe not specifically in the UK. But so when I was talking about an island and Australia being an island, I was more talking about the fact that things can be different in an island because populations can't recover as quickly because there aren't land bridges to help mammal populations move across. But with birds, it doesn't matter that much. So it was more linked to large mammals and predators in Australia. But remember that there were vultures in Australia, as fossil evidence has shown. So it's just a matter of, has that population had the time and opportunity to come back and repopulate Australia or not? So when we think about islands and the unique kind of biology that goes on in islands, it can be quite crazy. Like, think about the Galapagos Islands, because as soon as there's a barrier that prevents movement, you can get some really unique and unusual things going on in an island. And you can get some very specific niches start to pop up and be populated. Turtle or tortoises with very long necks, very short necks, in between necks, finches of all different sorts. And the Galapagos Islands is a great example of that. But specifically with the UK is an island, of course, but that's not the reason that you don't have vultures, endemic vultures at least. At least I don't think so. But you might have a couple vultures fly through every now and then. Lucy, you'd like to know why a vulture's called the cleanup crew? You're going to find out in 3 minutes. Vultures have really, really strong stomach acids. They are perfectly suited to a scavenging lifestyle, and they can pretty much tolerate all sorts of diseases that can be in rancid meat. So, meat that even other animals would not touch, vultures are pretty good at being able to digest it and being able to kill bacteria along the way. And that's a really, really important thing. Because if there are bacteria, and there can be some really, really terrible bacteria in the world, terrible in the sense that they can be very harmful. Because for them, that's great if they're harmful, it means that they're living their best life. But for us, and for other mammals and animals, it can be really, really harmful. So things like botulism, for example, anthrax, those are all bacterium. But vultures have the most crazy gut with such strong stomach acids that they're able to even kill some of these bacteria, which means that when it comes out the other side, it's almost like it's been neutralized. And that's a really, really important ecosystem function that vultures have. If something else eats it, um, and it dies, that bacteria is still going to be in that meat, right? So something else comes and eats that meat, it's also going to get infected by this bacteria. So vultures play a really, really important role in cleaning things up, neutralizing bacterial enemies. But hopefully, Lucy, you'll see just what they can do in a minute or two. Harriet Hodgin. I was about to say Hogden. Harriet Hodgin, you say, hello, Trishana FC and all of Wild Earth Chatters from a lovely, rainy Cape Town. I hope that it is rainy and not windy and just stunning. Fana, you say, hi, Trish. Hi, Fana. Thank you for joining us. Oh, and Darcy Miller, you say the UK has had a few sightings of Egyptian vultures and bearded vultures. Well, there you go. That's pretty cool. Thinking about islands, islands can, if you even think about Madagascar, for example, one of the things that is really unique about islands and island biology, and there not being movement, I mean, birds, yes, they can move. Sea creatures, they can move, but a land dwelling animal is going to find it very difficult to move unless they hitch a ride on some kind of raft. But you end up getting, you can get gigantism on islands, and then you can get dwarfism on islands, which I think is so cool. It feels to me like, imagine there's all this, there's still the same amount of evolutionary pressure, there's still the same amount of evolutionary time that passes where things are constantly getting acted upon, environments are constantly changing just slightly. But when you're in a big continent like Africa, and animals can move through, they can mix, genetics mix, they can even move up and through um, into Europe, into the Middle East. That's like there's a lots of space for all this, what I'd like to call this biological potential or evolutionary potential. And when I think about islands, it feels like all that potential energy is just locked up there. And then you end up with giant chameleons and the tiniest chameleon in the world. You end up with all this variation as that potential change, that evolutionary potential tries to find a way out or find a way to express itself. It I hope you know what I mean, but in my head that's how I see it. Leopard lover, you say thanks. My pleasure. You say that's some next level information. You can't wait to take it to the lunchroom at work tomorrow. Do it. Tell us how it went. Maybe much like me, you'll probably get your friends rolling your eyes. First, I'll be like, that's really cool. And then I continue going on and on and on. Actually, it's more my family. Look at these vultures. They're like, excuse me, it's lunchtime. Oh, I see a person. I think it's going to happen soon. There was definitely a person's face. Oh, that is a good point. It could also just be tourists that are waiting to see the feeding frenzy. Look at how all the vultures are kind of like aggregating around little patches of shade. It's quite cute. Makes me think that everyone's getting along. Oh, looks like the vultures know something we don't know. Look at that sneaky marabou stalk. Top right corner. Kind of animal lover, doesn't it? Doesn't it look like that? Everybody is sitting with their group at the lunch table until the buffet comes out, and then it's all madness. We are all waiting with bated breath, us including the vultures. Hey, leopard lover. Yes, so these vultures do get fed by humans, but they're completely wild vultures. This is supplementary. So what happens is that the restaurant has leftover scraps of meat and bones and things like that, which are absolutely safe for the vultures to eat. And so they throw them off here. And then the vultures can come down and eat. So they don't train the vultures to come here. The vultures learn that they can come here and they can get scraps. Now, this is quite important because vultures are endangered, one, and can be poisoned quite a lot. Poisoned by meat. They do suffer from lead poisoning. So if a carcass or an animal is shot and the carcass is left there with lead bullets and vultures go and eat it, that becomes a problem and that will poison the vultures. On top of that, some vultures are purposely poisoned, whether that's for traditional medicine or because they are thought of as a bad omen, whatever it is, their population sizes are dwindling. So here, even though humans will come and throw scraps for them to eat, they're not trained to come and eat here. They're completely wild. It supplements their diet. And here he comes. Here comes the ranger. Now watch how they all come round, but they don't mob him. Again, they are not trained to do any of this. So that waiting is all learned. So, like I said, this will all be scraps from the restaurant. It almost looks like he's about to put on a show and he has a very captive audience. Oh my goodness. Marabou storks getting in there. Marabou storks are so huge. My gosh. They look like sardines. Darcy Miller, you say you love vultures, but you don't think you'd have the confidence to get that close. Yeah, and so many of them as well. But clearly, the people here and the vultures here have started to actually have some sort of relationship. And I mean, ultimately, this is just extra. So it doesn't have to feed all of them, and it certainly doesn't have to make all of them full. This is extra supplementary and is a much better use of meat scraps than throwing it away. Dark May Lover, you say lucky vultures, free food. It is. And I think it's quite nice that people have found a better way to dispose of anything, really, any waste of ours. If you can have a better way to dispose of it and it's to the benefit of something else, I think that's awesome. But Leopard Lover, you also have an interesting question. You say, do I think this would be a good idea for all lodges to do, or would it become problematic? I think it depends very much on that reserve. So, for example, remember we spoke about these closed reserves that are closed systems and how they've got to really micromanage so much in order to maintain the balance in a small area. So, if you have a larger area that's exposed to other reserves and that animals can freely move and things like that, I think it's not a bad idea. But if every lodge starts doing it, I think at first it could become problematic. But then I suppose vultures will stop moving um, from one from one spot to go to a specific place where there is free food being given to them, and maybe they just hang around resident in their at their nearest lodge, and it would all sort of even out. I don't know, but it's one of those things that it may look like a good idea, and I think it is, but then we don't know what the effect would be if everyone starts doing it. And yes, I'm sure there are some that aren't getting a scrap this time round, but remember that they do this all the time. They do it daily. And they might even do it more than once a day. So eventually everyone gets something. Exactly, Darkmane Lover. It is like a snack on the run. At this point, with the few lodges on the continent that do this, I'm sure it doesn't create a dependency. It simply isn't enough to create a dependency, and I think that's really important because if we overdo it, and perhaps that's also something to consider, Leopard Lover, if every lodge does it create a dependency on the lodges to feed them and then disrupt natural behavior? In a way, offering them smaller amounts might actually be doing them a better service than giving them large amounts that force them or encourage them to rely solely on lodges providing food, in which case we could disrupt their natural scavenging behavior. And then, like, was it Lucy that was asking earlier about them being the cleanup crew? Then doesn't that doesn't that also mean that um, we are disrupting that cleaning crew behavior and they only come to lodges to feed, which would definitely be healthier for them because then carcasses are not poisoned or they can avoid poisoned carcasses. But then at the same time, poisons that normally would go through the gut of a vulture and come out neutralize the other side, protecting other animals, would we be disrupting that if every lodge started doing it? So it's a very delicate balance to be struck. We need to be able to help protect them because they're all endangered species that we have here, the vultures in southern Africa. We need to be able to protect them and do what we can without disrupting their behavior to the point where there's a cascading effect within the ecosystem. And I think this, few lodges doing it, small amounts, is probably the way to go and definitely the way to test the waters before we can figure out exactly how we can do better for vultures. Cat fan, you say cool sighting. It was a cool sighting, right? And you can keep watching the Victoria Falls cam and you can definitely see it again. And also remember that behavior that we watched where they all kind of mobbed in together and you kind of feel bad for them? That's exactly how they are at a carcass, especially once the carcass is opened up. So, normally with vultures, there's a hierarchy at a carcass. They need larger vultures, like a lappet faced vulture, to come in, open up a carcass. Hooded vultures with that smaller beak are not able to do that, and they kind of go for the smaller bits of meat that other bigger vultures can't go for, like the muscles, intercostal muscles between ribs. Other vultures are just too big to get in there, but hooded vultures can. So there is a hierarchy when you're waiting at a carcass. But once that carcass is opened up, we pretty much see what you've just seen here. Everyone fighting for their piece of meat, which is an important behavior. It's the way that vultures and many animals in the wild live. Ebbs, you say, wow, what a sight to see. It really was a sight to see. And now look, everyone's back at their picnic tables under the shade, probably waiting for their next snack. If they don't catch a whiff of something else in the air, and then they'll all be heading in that direction. Evil Tizzy, you say this channel is awesome. Oh my goodness, you should start watching our other shows too. Did you know you can go on live safaris with us? Yep. And it's a lot of fun. And then you get to see our faces, and you get to see us in action, not just hear our voices. So I hope you stick around. Lil Pepe 1, you say, feels good to know nothing gets wasted. It is. I think it's really important if we can find a way to figure out how we can be better with our waste and how we can do so to the betterment of the other animals. And not just animals, other life on the planet. Anyway, fun's over now. Until next time here at Victoria Falls, let's head over to Mabulas for some more birdie action. Hello, birdie. You know who it is. It's our lapwing mum or dad. Hard to tell the sex. Both incubate the eggs. And she's got 3 eggs under there. She looks a little cooler today. Last time we saw her, she was gula fluttering to what seemed like no avail, trying desperately to cool herself down. Her beak is still a little bit open now, so she is still warm, but a lot less than it was the other day. Maybe she'll get up for us and show us her eggs again. Does anyone know when these eggs were first found on the Mabula cam? Because that might give us a little bit of an indication of when we can expect chicks. The incubation period is about 30 days, 33 days, somewhere around there. So if we're lucky, we might be able to see some chicks if we're watching the cam at the right time. Thank you, Zumi. You zoomies are so amazing. If you're not sure what a zoomie is, these are the people that control the cameras so that I don't have to and I can just talk to you. And the zoomie said that they think that the due to hatch date is sometime this coming week. So that's going to be really exciting for us. I've been thinking about eggs recently, and I was trying to figure out exactly how eggs form. Or not eggs, but eggshells specifically, how they form. And I found out that eggshells form from calcium deposits on the membrane of the egg. So, kind of like how crystals form, if you've ever seen um, ice kind of form around something, that's pretty much how the calcium gets deposited and then starts to build in these chains around the egg membrane. And as that shell moves through her oviduct, I think it was the oviduct, but as that shell moves through, color gets deposited in different ways. And with the blacksmith lapwing, we know that they have this really blotchy color to help those eggs blend in with the surrounding ground and, like in this case, that rock on the left. Oh, there we go. Hello, Mum. How are your eggs? I think I see one. Now, she's pulled quite a bit of debris over the nest, which is a great call. Sometimes they just leave their eggs totally exposed. Linda, you'd like to know if she would leave the nest during the day to get some food and water or only at night. No, she'd leave it during the day as well. The big factor on whether she leaves the nest or not depends on the temperature. So if it's super hot, like it probably is pretty hot right now, you can see that she's shading the eggs. If it's very cold, she's going to be on the eggs. But if it's a fine temperature, she'll happily leave the eggs and move on because those eggs are cryptically colored. And that's her best defense. Her other defense would be distracting a predator by pretending that her wing is broken, hence the name lapwings. They're very good at that. And then as soon as a predator thinks, oh, easy meal, this bird has a broken wing, I'm definitely going to get it, she'll fly away very quickly. But now in this heat, she might not leave them. Looks like she's just trying to shade them, but not put her body heat onto them. There's some birds that lay very colorful eggs, like bright blue eggs. And it's interesting, and I just got reminded of this now because it's not only the female that will incubate these eggs, but also the males. And then it got me thinking about something called the black male hypothesis, which is simply a hypothesis, but it's a very interesting take on brightly colored eggs. Not that we have brightly colored eggs in this case, but for example, where did I see some really nice blue eggs recently? It might have been at Amakala. Yeah, it was Bokmakeri eggs. They were really, really, really bright blue. So, anyway, there's this thing called the black male hypothesis. Because bright blue eggs are not super beneficial. And the blue color comes from biliverdin, which is so we have bilirubin in our body. It's the thing that gives our bile that beautiful color. And that type of pigment is what's deposited into the eggshells to create that bright blue color. But to what benefit? If anything, that's even more costly, right? So some of the hypotheses is that one, because it's so bright blue, it can cut out some UV radiation, which is great. We don't want developing chicks to get UV damage because ultraviolet radiation can damage DNA, particularly if you are, suspended in liquid and a fetus. But another thing there is that because there's an increase, because the blue can cut out ultraviolet, the blue can also make infrared, or the shells more prone to infrared, and infrared is associated with heat, and that means that some of the adults have to keep better tabs on the heat around those eggs. But anyway, I digress. So this blackmail hypothesis hypothesizes that females have developed blue eggs because they know that blue eggs mean that they are more likely to be seen by predators. And by leaving the nest and leaving the nest with the males, or in sight of males who can see they've got bright blue eggs, it in a way blackmails the males into caring for the nest and caring for the eggs. Anyway, I thought that was super interesting. I'm going to make something really obvious and make it dangerous for my babies so that you are forced to take care of them. An interesting hypothesis. I thought I saw some droplets falling from the chest of this lapwing. I was not sure if it was maybe saliva that kind of dripped out of its mouth, but if it's water, it kind of makes more sense. Let's think about a few things here. There's a lot of debris covering those eggs. She's standing shading those eggs. So I think that her main concern right now in the heat of the day is that her eggs are going to get too hot. Now, if that was also your concern and you're a lapwing and you nest near water, I think it would make a lot of sense to go to the water, to wet your underside, and then come through and sit on your eggs to cool them down a little bit. So maybe that's what was happening as well. Just look at that black patch that extends from her throat to her breast towards her belly. It looks a little wet. It is so cool to watch her do her best to keep her eggs just at the perfect temperature. So much investment in the next generation of lapwings. Cat fan, you'd like to know what distinguishes tree nest builders and ground nest builders. There's not really a distinguishing feature. In fact, if there was a distinguishing feature, it would be that they build nests in trees or build nests on the ground. Something you can think about is whether the bird is has the type of foot structure that is for it's a little grebe, the type of foot structure that's for perching. Because if they have a perching foot structure, then they're going to have to build their nests in trees. If they have a foot structure that allows them to walk, then they can build their nests in on the ground. Water birds, like quite a few water birds or birds that live near and around water, tend to have scrapes, but not always. They can have platform nests. Basically, what I'm saying is that nest building, anatomy, and life history are so intricately intertwined that you can't say that birds that do this are nest builders. Birds that do this are ground nesters. Now, generally, you would think that birds that walk on the ground and spend most of their time on the ground are going to be ground nesters. But are they ground nesters because they spent most of their time walking on the ground, or are they walking on the ground and spending more time on the ground because they are ground nesters? So we don't know which came first. And remember, birds have been around for a long time. Birds are direct descendants of theropod dinosaurs. And nest building has been around for a really long time. And where they build their nests, how they build their nests, how they bring up their young affects so many things. It affects how they lay their eggs, what color their eggs are, what shape, what size. So much to think about. So it is very much a chicken and egg kind of question. But usually, if you see birds in trees, they probably build nests in trees. If you see them on the ground, they probably build nests in the ground. If you see them in the water, they probably build nests in or around the water. Like jacanas, for example, they build floating nests. Penelope, you say hi all. 33 degrees in Salt Rock, but you're lucky you're in a nice cool room, and you say that you wish they would find a shady spot to nest in. When it comes to, you know how honey badger don't care? When it comes to birds, I feel very much like blacksmith lapwing doesn't care. And blacksmith lapwings are hardy. And if they fail, they get up and they start again. Luckily, these zebra don't have to think about egg laying. But egg laying is actually a really nice advantage. It means that you can take care. Well, for one, you can reproduce, and that offspring can sit somewhere else while you go about and do your normal daily activities because you're not having to carry it around with you. So you can develop the fetus at a very young age, tiny age, deposit it in a safe place, and carry on like you were never pregnant. Can you imagine? Anyway, as these zebras walk off, you know what we've been missing as much as I love the birding and all of your wonderful questions. Thank you so much. Keep sending them through. I love thinking about these curious little things. And Sir 50, I saw your name there. Welcome. It's been a while. Anyway, let me send us over to Rosie's, where there is, in the words of Nadine, who's sitting in the director's chair, an elephant living its best life. Oh, it definitely is. Well done, Ellie. Looks like it is going to live its best life. It's going to enjoy this. So I'm going to be quiet and let us enjoy these sounds. I think we might be in for a little bit of a face-off here, but hopefully everyone will be very decent. They've realized they're in each other's space. But I've seen I've seen elephants get angry at hippos before. Oh, does that not look like here comes trouble? Yep, and that is picking a fight. It is very important to relieve yourself fully before you pick a fight, so you don't run into any unexpected problems, as this elephant has shown us. Elephants can get such bees in their bonnets about animals that are absolutely no threat to them whatsoever. And other times, they can be at a waterhole and share it so happily with other animals. Sometimes I think they do it just for fun, or just to amuse themselves. And I don't think this elephant is done yet. You're right, Mercedes. This hippo, poor hippo, doesn't get any peace here. This elephant is pretty much done at the waterhole. It's just the fact that the hippo is here that is keeping the elephant around. Maybe he just wants some, maybe he just wants a friend. Alan, you say the elephant looks young, like a teenager with lots of bluster and cheekiness. He's not that young, but he certainly does have a lot of bluster and cheekiness. And I think he looks like he's probably in his late teens, maybe even early 20s. Oh my goodness, that's a very strong gust of wind. Wow, that was a strong gust of wind. That elephant could tell before it even came through. And it left. But Alan, you bring that up, and even though this is it's not the youngest elephant bull that's on there on his own, but imagine you were an elephant bull coming into to his prime. So you're hanging out with lots of older elephant bulls that are well and truly in their prime and are mating with lots of partners and are very dominant. And every time you have an interaction with them, you're always submissive and subordinate. And then you can find this hippo that can't really fight back, and it's an opportunity to show off in a way, and maybe also practice without having other animals or other elephants around to put you in your place. And I think with younger bulls, so not necessarily the teenagers, but even those that are just in their early 20s, late teens, I think for them, it's an opportunity to show off, inflate their ego just a little bit. Justin, you'd like to know if I've been involved in any conservation projects and which ones meant the most to me. Ooh, that is a difficult question. So mostly I've been involved in science related projects. So not necessarily like so research on animals as opposed to directly conservation projects in reserves and things like that. But I've done quite a few re-greening projects, so like landscape restoration. I recently was involved in a project that was rewilding pangolins, which I think was a really special one for me. But the majority of my work before, especially before I became a guide, was science based, so research and trying to better understand animals and growth patterns and feeding patterns. It's one of those questions where it feels like I'm involved in a project every couple months, and now when I have to think about it, I can't think of any. In a way, I think that Wild Earth is probably one of my favorite and most meaningful conservation projects because it gives people the opportunity to learn from people who are qualified guides or scientists, and sometimes a combination, like I am. It gives the public an opportunity to learn from a credited source and experience wildlife. And effective conservation in terms of science can only go so far because you don't want your target audience to be people who are already um, interested in the science of wildlife. For example, people who are reading scientific papers, they're already interested and involved. So with Wild Earth, we get to engage an audience that may otherwise not be reading scientific papers every day. And effective conservation always starts with care and empathy and curiosity. And I think that's what we get to do here at Wild Earth is inspire those qualities. And whether you take that and it just means that you tell your friend about elephants or about turtles or sharks or pangolins, if you take that information that you learn here and you discuss it with other people or you have a better understanding of it, or if it sparks something in you that makes you want to study that specific animal, whatever it is, I think that's where the fundamental change can happen, in bringing that information from credible sources to a public arena. So I suppose Wild Earth is the most the one that's meant the most to me. Well, as our elephant moves away after showing a little bit of bravado, getting a nice drink, getting cooled down, let's head over to Tembe Elephant Park, which is always a treat. All the elephants look so busy here at Tembe. They look like they're at a construction site. Everyone is got their head down, they're busy at the ground or at the water, sometimes barely interacting with one another, just getting the job done. It seems like things are windy on a few of the cameras, and we do have that low pressure system coming in, and hopefully that's going to bring some really good rain. Not that Tembe needs it. Well, I mean, everywhere needs it, but Tembe less so than some of the areas in the low felt. Hey, leopard lover, that's an interesting question. You'd like to know if thinking about how animals have evolved, you are wondering whether data from ice cores from Antarctica could hold crucial data for South African biodiversity. So, data from ice cores, I mean, it's nice if ice cores happen to have evidence of fossils or things in it, but that's not really what ice cores are used for. Ice cores are used to give us information about climate and how the climate has changed over the years. And understanding how climate has changed over the years is crucial for South African biodiversity and for biodiversity across the world, because it can give us an understanding of when critical moments in Earth's history, climatic history, coincide with other things like extinction events that and information about extinction events and things like that we get from other sources like fossil evidence, and also like looking at rocks and patterns in the rocks. But when it comes to ice cores, we're specifically looking for climatic data. But what I love is the way that all these different techniques and all these different kind of topics come together. And we can use them to align different parts that maybe I'm not an expert on or you're not an expert on, but hey, Bob is an expert on. And then we can align those things and make really informed decisions. So 50, you say nice tusks on that bull. Quite a few of the bulls have really nice tusks here at Tembe. I wonder which one you're looking at. I'm looking at the one in the center between the there's three and the one in the middle. That's the one I'm looking at. He's got some really nice tusks. It does, Ellen. The bush does look healthy and green. And this particular part of South Africa does receive a good amount of rainfall, very tropical. Even in the dry season or winter, it's still so humid, lots of moisture in the air. So it almost always looks nice and lush. You're welcome, leopard lover. And it would be really nice if they were finding other bits of like fossil evidence in there too. But primarily, ice cores are for climatic or understanding climatic conditions through Earth's history. But you say thanks for helping me to understand the study. Are you referring to a specific study? If you are, please put it in the chat, and then I can go and read that, and maybe I'll be able to help you out even more. Well, I'm seeing the hadidas in the background there and seeing the white-faced whistling ducks, and I'm thinking back to when we were discussing nests. Now, both of these birds are close to the water. Now, hadidas don't need to be, but white-faced whistling ducks are ducks, so they like to be close to the water. And white-faced whistling ducks will build a nest kind of right at the waterside, on the grasses at the edge. But you're not necessarily thinking of them as just ground nesting birds, but they're building a nest on the edges there. Hadidas, they build large platform nests in trees. Now, they don't necessarily need to be near the water, they can be anywhere. It's just so deeply intertwined with their life history, and it's so hard to say that a bird does this because of this or that because of that. So many, it's hard to tell which came first. But I would imagine that as soon as birds were able to fly, that the tops of trees and things like that became available niches and became safe places. And that's just my thought, that maybe tree nesting, in terms of birds that gain flight, I think that would have been a no-brainer. Nest where it's safe. It's also interesting to note that the first true birds could fly. Look at this elephant getting upset at this jacana. So the first birds, true birds, could fly, and flightless birds evolved from flighted ancestors. So ground nesting birds and birds that don't fly as well, not perching birds. So things like francolins, chickens, and then truly flightless birds like penguins and cassowaries and ostriches. Those evolved from flying ancestors. So I suspect, I don't know, there is something's tail dangling in this tree. Zumi, can we have a look here? Big tree on our right, there is something's tail dangling there, which is just making me feel like I hope it's a leopard. But um, I don't know what else it could be. Maybe it is a snake. But something is really wiggling its tail in the middle there. So this tree that's closest to us, follow it up, and then you'll see the dangling bit. Right? Oh my goodness, Trishala, you're crazy. That is an elephant at the back. My goodness, I thought it could have been a leopard, everyone. Clearly, I'm missing the bush. I was only there last week. Darlington, you say good afternoon, guys, watching live from Namibia. But you are you are Zambian, sorry. So we are very happy to have you on board. We are glad that you get to enjoy some of our South African wildlife. But we also have cams in Namibia and Zimbabwe and in Kenya. Not any in Zambia yet, but maybe soon. In a weird way, this wind is quite cute, quite soft and sweet. And I say that because I lived in Cape Town for 2 years, almost 3 years. And there I find the wind not so cute and playful and soft. Anyway, how about we head back to Victoria Falls since things have calmed down here and see what's up with the vultures? Oh, and I would love to stop over at Stony Point as well before we say goodbye. All about the marabou storks, no vultures in sight. Now, earlier, I had a question. I'm just going to try and find it again, but it was during the whole vulture frenzy. Ah, it was Hillary. Hi, Hillary B. You were saying that have vultures learned to run with their wings half open, which you love watching. I love watching it too. I think it's very cute. And are they the only birds who do this? No, I've seen lots of large birds do that, particularly large raptors. And I think that it might be a defensive position. I think it might also just be helpful in movement because if their wings are out, maybe it gives them a bit more balance to move quicker. But I've seen it with raptors like eagles and things when they are trying to take down prey or catch something. It's almost like moving their wings out of the way and perhaps also for balance. The other time we'd see it or them opening their wings like that is just for a stretch or for to dry themselves, to sun themselves. But I'm actually going to read up a little bit more about it. But it is something I've noticed in other raptors as well. Ooh. Sound of the helicopter is not thoroughly relaxing, is it? Um, but it's okay. Look at your throat pouch, just dangling like that. You are sweet. I said I did want to head over to Stony Point before we have to say hello, and we've got about 12 minutes left. So if we could jump over to Stony, that would be amazing. And then we can come back here if anything happens on this side. Oh, the sound of the ocean. I love it. And we've got our usual suspects. Top left corner, we've got the Dussies. Top right corner, we have some cormorants and we have some penguins. And you know what is great at Stony Point? When we get to listen to the sound of the ocean. Good morning, Sandy. Thank you for joining us. And Hillary, it is always a pleasure. always a pleasure to have you on board, and I'm so glad that you learned something new and interesting. I love it when I learn something new, um, whether it's about the environment or I don't know, art, whatever it is. But for me, when I learn something new about the way that animals adapt and their bodies change and the crazy biology that can happen inside of them, it makes me so excited. And we're getting a closer look at these African penguins. We've been seeing quite a few endangered species today. All those vultures and these African penguins. In fact, the endangered species we've seen today are all birds. And remember earlier I was saying to you that flightless birds evolved from flying ancestors. Same applies here. These penguins would have evolved from flying ancestors. In fact, there is... Oh, I was trying to remember the name of this ancient penguin. But it was grey and red, which I think is just fantastic. And it was about the height of me, maybe a little bit more. So pretty impressive ancient penguin. It would have been the ancestor of these guys, now neatly dressed in their tuxedos, of course. But red and grey is a good color combination too, particularly when you think about the ocean. And you think about how red light is the first color to go as you dive down. So that means that those penguins, those ancient penguins that were red and grey, had a really good advantage underwater. But clearly not an advantage that allowed those particular genes to be carried forward. Oh, this is quite cute. The penguin on the left has a white spot on its tail. That's unusual. It's always helpful to look out for unusual spot patterns or features that help you keep track of individuals. And that's a great way to collect data as well and start to figure out patterns because you know it's a single individual that you're seeing a particular behavior from. Stony Point is always such a wonderful breath of fresh air. It's almost like you can feel the calmness and coolness of the ocean wash over you when we're at this camera. And we have more birds. Egyptian geese there. And we've got some gulls, seagulls on the left. I can't tell if they're kelp. They look like kelp gulls. We've had such wonderful birding over the last couple days. I often wonder what these penguins are thinking, because in a way they can be quite emotive, if that is the right word. But you know, the way they lift their heads up and they look from side to side, it's almost as if they're waiting for something. Expectantly. Surely something must be happening. I wonder what they're looking at. Maybe they're looking at the ocean currents, the waves, maybe they're looking for their partners. Or maybe that's just their chill face. I don't know, but whatever it is, they are very interesting to watch. And that's what I love about these cameras. It gives anybody around the world the ability to sit and watch animals. And just by watching, we learn so much. And just by watching, we become curious about so much. Penelope, you are welcome. I'm so glad you enjoyed the show. And Leopard Lover, you too. And I'm glad that you enjoyed the great conversations. But that's it from me for 2024. I've really enjoyed Live at the Waterhole with all of you over the last couple days, and I hope that you have a wonderful festive season and you'll be in great hands until the end of the year. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye for now.